sky was on fire. Sirens screamed through the streets of Tel Aviv. Children cried in underground shelters. Families huddled in stairwells, waiting for the next boom. And then it came. A thunderclap, a direct hit, a residential building shattered. Fire crews rushed in, police officers, soldiers, neighbors, all pulling stone and glass with their bare hands. And in the middle of it, a faint cry. Not the sound of sirens, a different cry. A baby, a young Israeli policewoman, covered in ash, heard it first. She didn't wait for orders. She crawled through what was left of a hallway, ceiling beams bent like twisted wires above her head. Dust filled the air like smoke in a battlefield. Then she saw it, an overturned crib, split open by shrapnel, and beneath it, a small bundle moving. She reached out, pulled, and there it was, alive, breathing. Not a scratch. No one could explain it. The room was unrecognizable. The ceiling had caved in, the walls scorched black. But in the middle of the wreckage, life. They called it luck. She called it something else, a miracle. And while the world watched missile counts and political maps, something far greater was unfolding in silence. Not one, but many moments like this were recorded that night. A dog, trapped for hours under rubble, rescued unharmed. A woman who left her apartment 5 minutes early for work. Her building took a direct hit. A family saved by an unexpected power outage that kept them in a hallway instead of their living room. These weren't just stories. They were interruptions in the natural order of chaos, divine fingerprints, something more than coincidence. And as the debris settled, a question echoed louder than any siren. What kind of war makes room for miracles? It wasn't just one miracle. It was one night. 200 rockets. Hold on a minute. If you have not subscribed to this channel, do well to subscribe, like, comment, and share videos of this channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Just after sundown, a sudden wave of Iranian missile fire lit up the skies over Israel. These weren't flares. These were long-range ballistic weapons, many built on North Korean designs, others launched by proxy groups across the region. Their target? Civilian cities. No warning. No mercy. The Iron Dome screamed to life. A web of defense lit up above Tel Aviv, Ashkelon, Ramla, and Rishon LeZion. 150 rockets were intercepted, but 50 slipped through. On any other day, that would have meant dozens, maybe hundreds, of lives lost. But not this time. A rocket hit a building. The structure should have collapsed, but it didn't. Somehow, the walls absorbed the blast, as if bracing for it. In another city, a high-rise took a direct impact, but the apartment it struck had been empty just moments before. Every resident had left to attend a last-minute prayer service. One by one, reports trickled in. The damage was real, but the survival felt impossible. A military analyst later said, "If these rockets had landed where they were supposed to, we would be mourning a national tragedy." But they didn't, and no one could explain why. Some said it was a glitch in Iran's targeting system. Others blamed high winds, but to the people watching from rooftops and shelter staircases, it didn't feel like wind. It felt like something else was intervening. Because Israel isn't a large country. It takes just a couple hours to drive from north to south. A coordinated strike of this size should have overwhelmed it. But it didn't. And even hardened skeptics, military commanders, journalists, began to use different language. They didn't say lucky. They started saying protected. What if divine protection didn't look like a glowing angel or parted seas? What if it looked like one wrong rocket angle, one empty apartment, one power outage that saved a family's life? The question no one wanted to ask. But everyone whispered, was this war spiritual? There's a reason this war feels different. It's not just the missiles. It's the way they're used, the way one side fires in chaos, and the other responds with surgical intent. Iran launches with rage, wide, wild arcs of steel and fire, hoping one lands somewhere fatal. They call it retaliation. But retaliation for what? For precision? Because Israel doesn't fire back the same way. It doesn't rain missiles over Tehran randomly. It waits, it tracks, and then it strikes. One building, one floor, one room. Last night, Israeli drones flew through the night sky, unmanned, unseen, toward the Persian Gulf. Their target? Gas fields. Not civilians, not cities, but the fuel stations of Iran's military engine. One strike destroyed a drone manufacturing plant in Tabriz. Another hit a missile storage site near Bandar Abbas. And then, silence. No mass death. No shopping mall turned to rubble. Just cold, calculated precision. But there's something else beneath this military difference. Something spiritual. Because Iran's rockets come with confusion. You can see it in their leaders' eyes. As missiles miss their marks and generals scramble to flee. There's panic. But Israel, it operates with calm, with vision, almost as if guided. When a building is hit, it's not because someone was guessing, it's because a name was marked. A scientist tied to Iran's nuclear project, a general connected to underground drone factories. And when that building falls, it's not about revenge, it's about preventing something worse. This isn't just a war of nations, it's a war of strategies, yes, but deeper still, a war of spirits. And that's why the tension isn't only physical, it's biblical. Because the Bible didn't just predict wars and rumors of wars. It described the kind of war, one where deception would rule, where nations would rise against Israel, and where survival would look like miracles. Isaiah said, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." Not because weapons wouldn't form, but because they'd miss. They'd explode in empty rooms. They'd fly towards cities and vanish. They'd be launched by human hands and stopped by unseen ones. In Tehran, the lights stayed on. But inside government buildings, the air changed. Footage leaked from a private runway showed a convoy of black SUVs racing toward a private jet. The woman filming whispered in Farsi, "Look how they flee." No explosion had hit them. No missile had landed near. But still, they were running. Why? Because Israel didn't just prove it could defend itself. It proved something more dangerous. It could see. It could find the names, the apartments, the meeting rooms, and it could erase them without warning, without mistake. That fear is spiritual. When your enemy shoots randomly, you hide. You wait for it to pass. But when your enemy knows where you are, you panic. Just hours earlier, Khosrow Hassani, a high-ranking commander in Iran's Revolutionary Guard intelligence wing, was eliminated. Not in a battlefield. Not even in uniform. He was in his private residence, under guard. Yet the strike found him. The walls around him still stood, but his room didn't. That's not a lucky shot. That's precision. That's a message, and the message is spreading. Iran's upper ranks are scrambling, repositioning bunkers, calling emergency meetings, issuing orders that make no sense to their subordinates, because they're no longer fighting missiles. They're fighting a shadow, and the deeper fear, that this shadow isn't just Mossad or drones, that it's being helped. There are whispers in the street, among clerics, among ordinary Iranians. They say, maybe Israel is protected. They don't say it loud, but they say it, because how else do you explain what's happening? How else do you explain the building that didn't collapse, the rocket that didn't detonate, the scientist found by a drone the size of a bird. How do you explain a baby breathing under rubble, untouched? This isn't just psychological warfare, it's spiritual disruption. Because when miracles start happening in war, the fear multiplies, and fear is contagious. It spreads faster than missiles. It infects strategy rooms. It seeps into night watches. And it causes something no weapon can stop: doubt. Iran has missiles, drones, allies. But now it also has something else. The question: what if we're not just fighting Israel? This isn't the first time Israel's been surrounded. In fact, it's been surrounded for thousands of years. The prophets warned of it, not with military maps or satellite images, but with names: Edom, Moab, Elam, Persia, Assyria. Today, we know them as Jordan, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and their proxies. The nations may have changed names, but the alignment hasn't. And that's where it gets biblical. Because Zechariah said, "I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about." Not just attacked, not just disputed, trembling, shaking. And now, it's happening. Rocket sirens are now background noise in Jerusalem. Children learn to drop and cover as second nature. But in the middle of it, the city stands. Not burned, not broken, still trembling, but not falling. And what does the world do? It watches, it debates, it files reports. But no one can explain the math. 200 rockets plus direct hits does not equal this low of a death count. There's no military formula for it, only a spiritual one. And it's not just Zechariah. Psalm 83 lists the ancient tribes that would one day conspire together to wipe Israel off the map. It's not just metaphor. The tribes listed can be traced to modern military alliances in today's Middle East. And yet those alliances fail, again and again. Not because Israel overpowers them, but because something holds them back. Even those in Israel who don't believe in God are starting to wonder. How does a building get hit, then stand? How does a baby survive, but the rocket didn't? How does a targeted apartment fall, but not the rest of the floor? It feels like design, like pattern, like prophecy. And that's what makes this war different from the last. It's not just about defense systems and strike ratios. It's about timing, patterns, signs. Because every time Iran attacks, something stops it. And every time Israel strikes, it's precise. That's not politics. That's prophetic alignment. And the real question isn't what happened this week. It's what happens next. Because some say this was retaliation. Others say it was warning. But what if it was just the beginning? What do you call it when science fails to explain survival? When drones meant to destroy hit empty skies? When missiles land, yet don't explode? When war machines fire non-stop, and still something stops them? You can't call it chance anymore, because it's not just the buildings, it's not just the timing, it's the pattern, it's the covering, and it's starting to be noticed. A military report leaked to foreign press this week, one that wasn't meant to be public. It detailed the last 48 hours of air defense data over Israel. What it found stunned even the analysts. Some of Iran's most advanced Shahed drones simply vanished from radar. Others changed course mid-air without being jammed. They weren't intercepted, they were misdirected. One commander wrote, "We're seeing interference without technology. Nothing we deployed accounts for these anomalies." But spiritual watchers saw it coming, because Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood." This war may look like tanks, rockets, airstrikes, but something else is moving, something unseen. And even Iran's leadership is feeling it. Their generals are running, their bunkers are deeper, their decisions more chaotic. Because they know now, Israel doesn't need to strike everywhere. It just needs to strike once, in the right place. And that fear, it's no longer limited to Iran. Whispers in Russia, China, Turkey, nations watching this unfold, are now considering, if miracles are protecting Israel, how do we plan for that? You can't map it. You can't counter it. You can only respect it, or be caught by it. Because when God fights for a nation, the battlefield becomes unpredictable. Physics don't behave, weapons don't obey, and enemies don't sleep. This isn't a conflict. It's a revelation. A revealing of the unseen battle behind the visible one. A shaking of what can be shaken. And what's left standing is more than just buildings. It's prophecy. The kind that doesn't wait for headlines. The kind that unfolds in whispers and warnings. The kind that shows itself through a baby rescued in silence. A drone turning away. A city still standing. But now, something else is shifting. Not just in the war room, but in the heavens. Because the miracles aren't slowing down. They're increasing. A father walks into what's left of his home. The windows are blown out. The floor is cracked. But there, his family stands, untouched. The rocket that hit the roof didn't detonate. The army says it's a rare malfunction. He says it's grace. A young boy's security camera captures a missile descending toward their street, only for it to veer suddenly, exploding in an empty field next door. The news called it a miscalculation. His mother called it protection. All across Israel, stories like these are pouring in. A family who forgot their keys and left the building just in time. A woman who changed her commute and missed the train station bomb by 3 minutes. An elderly man who stopped to tie his shoe and avoided walking directly into a blast zone. These aren't military strategies. They aren't policy decisions. They're divine interruptions, and people are noticing. Not just the religious, not just the prophets and preachers, but everyday people, secular, skeptical, logical thinkers, are starting to ask the same question. What's going on here? Because when coincidence stacks up, it stops looking like coincidence. A Tel Aviv emergency room nurse whispered it under her breath after treating a baby with no wounds from a collapsed building. God is with us. A soldier who hadn't prayed in years stood outside his armored vehicle after a direct hit, alive, without injury, and fell to his knees. No one had to tell him what happened. He knew. Because something is happening in Israel. Not just geopolitically, not just militarily, spiritually, and even the enemy feels it. When missiles fail and drone strikes misfire, when entire gas fields are taken out by a single drone, when scientists disappear without warning and no one claims responsibility, something more is in play. It's not just defense, it's destiny. And if you listen closely, you can hear it in the silence that follows each explosion that should have killed but didn't. There's a whisper in the wind now, not one of fear, but of presence. Because what's happening in Israel isn't just survival, it's signaling. Something has begun, something ancient, something holy, and it's only just starting to be seen. In every war, there's a turning point, a moment where the world steps back and realizes something has shifted. This might be that moment, because this isn't just about missiles and miracles. It's about timing. It's about patterns. It's about something ancient unfolding in real time. For thousands of years, prophecies have pointed to a final season, a time when nations would rise against Israel, when weapons would form and fail, when the land of the prophets would once again become the center of the shaking. And now, look, the nations are aligned. The threats are multiplying. And yet, Israel still stands, not because of might, not because of alliances, but because something greater is holding it. The question no one dares to ask, but everyone feels pressing against their soul. What if we're watching the beginning of the end of something? Not the end of Israel, but the end of the illusion that this is just politics, because the miracles aren't random, they're rhythmic, they're timed. The rockets come and protection appears. The enemy plots and precision strikes silence them. The fear rises and faith explodes in its place. And somewhere in the heavens, a countdown is ticking. Not a countdown of warheads, but of prophecy, of fulfillment, of a promise made long ago. Because every miracle is more than mercy. It's a signal that the God of Israel is not silent. He never was. And maybe, just maybe, these miracles aren't meant only for survival. Maybe they're meant as a warning, a whisper before the thunder, a sign before the sky breaks open. And the world is watching. But will they understand? Because the question isn't, is God still moving? The question is, what happens when he moves next? The screen fades to black as sirens echo faintly in the distance. A map glows red. One last phrase appears on screen. He who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps.